There is a thing intelligent men learn last, and almost too late. You were taught your whole life that the right argument wins, that if you explain the truth clearly enough, the other man has to accept it. You believe this because the people who taught you were teachers, and teachers are paid to be persuaded by a good argument. The world is not. A scholar named KAGEYORI is about to learn this from a man who guts fish. KAGEYORI had explained the price 3 times. The fishmonger was not failing to understand the numbers. He was refusing to. He laughed, set down a fish, said something about scholars who can read characters but can't count fish, and the men at the next stalls laughed with him. So KAGEYORI did the thing he'd trained 20 years to do, he explained, precisely. Exactly why the price was wrong, exactly how it had been reached, exactly what it should have been. The fishmonger laughed harder. Because the moment you try to win a man like that with logic, you have already handed him the only thing he wanted, the pleasure of watching you waste your breath. The scholar at the fish stall KAGEYORI stopped speaking. He had not stopped because he had run out of argument. He had stopped because he had seen in the fishmonger's eyes the small bright satisfaction of a man who was being fed, and he understood very suddenly that he had been feeding him. The man at the next stall said something cutting under his breath. KAGEYORI did not answer. He took the fish he had already paid the wrong price for. He turned. He walked out of the market. He did not look back, but he could feel the laughter behind him. The way a man can feel rain at the back of his neck on a road he is no longer willing to turn his face into. He had been at the academy in the capital for 19 years. He had risen through every rank. He had been called the clearest mind of his generation. He had thought, walking back to his home province for the first time in 8 years, that the clarity would carry him through every kind of conversation, the ones in the lamp-lit halls of the academy, and the ones with fishmongers at noon in his own village's market. He had been wrong. The fishmonger had not been outwitted. He had not even been engaged. He had been amused in the way a strong man is amused by a smaller man who has decided to push him. And KAGEYORI had pushed. He had pushed for the same reason he had pushed every man who had disagreed with him in every argument of his adult life, since he had first discovered at 14 that he could think faster than the boys around him. He had pushed because he believed, underneath the pushing, that the world owed him the acknowledgement of his being right. The fishmonger did not owe him anything. The world he understood walking home with the wrong fish in his hand owed no man the acknowledgement of his being right, and a man who tried to collect this debt would spend his entire life collecting nothing else. It was at the bend in the path before his lodging that he passed the traveler. The traveler was sitting on a low stone, eating rice from a small wooden bowl. He was older, perhaps 50, with a wooden staff laid across his knees and a short blade at his hip. He did not look up when KAGEYORI passed, but as KAGEYORI went by, the traveler said very quietly without raising his eyes, "The fish smells fresh. You paid too much for it." KAGEYORI stopped. He turned. He did not know what to say. The traveler could not have seen the exchange at the market. The traveler did not look up. He set another piece of rice in his mouth. He chewed it slowly. Then he said just as quietly, "It is not the fishmonger's fault. He is what he is. You walked into the stall expecting him to be something else. That mistake belongs to you." He did not look up. He did not say anything more. KAGEYORI stood at the edge of the path with the fish in his hand for a long moment, and he understood with a small cold dread that he had just been seen by a stranger more clearly than he had ever been seen by anyone in his own life, and that whoever the stranger was about to take from him something he had spent 19 years believing he had earned. The lesson KAGEYORI thought he had already learned. KAGEYORI sat down on the path. He did not know why he sat. The stone was cold. The traveler had not invited him. But he sat anyway 2 paces from the older man on the dry edge of the road. The traveler did not look up. He continued to eat. He ate slowly, the way a man eats who has learned that the eating itself is the meal and that nothing is gained by hurrying through it. After a long silence, KAGEYORI said, "I have already learned this lesson." At the academy, KAGEYORI continued, "We are taught early not to argue with men who cannot follow the argument. We are taught the small art of withdrawing. I have practiced it for 12 years. I do not engage with men who are beneath the level of the conversation. What happened at the market today was a lapse. The lesson is not new to me." The traveler set down his chopsticks. He did not look at KAGEYORI. He looked at the bowl in his lap. "You are telling me," he said quietly, "that you have already learned how not to argue with stupid men." "Yes." "Then you have learned the wrong lesson." KAGEYORI did not answer. The traveler took one more piece of rice. He chewed it slowly. "The lesson you have learned at the academy is the lesson of withdrawal. You have been taught to step away. to save your breath, to preserve your dignity. This is not the lesson. This is the shallow version of it. It is the version a clever boy can learn at 19, and it is the version that makes a man, by the time he is 40, into a small bitter scholar surrounded by men he secretly despises and who secretly despise him back. He paused. The withdrawal is correct. The contempt that comes with it is the disease. KAGEYORI felt the words land somewhere under his ribs. You believe, the traveler continued, that you walked out of the market because the fishmonger was beneath the conversation. But you did not withdraw, you fled. There is a difference. A man who withdraws does so without the small private heat in his chest. A man who flees carries the heat with him down the road. You are carrying it now. You are still arguing with the fishmonger inside your own skull, and the fishmonger is winning because every word you direct at him in your mind is a word he did not have to earn. KAGEYORI looked at the path. He understood with a small, clean shock that the traveler was correct. He had been arguing with the fishmonger for the entire walk home. He had constructed 3 better versions of what he should have said. He had imagined the fishmonger's face. He had felt even in the imagining the small's bright heat of winning. He had not withdrawn. He had fled and brought the fight with him. What is the deeper lesson, he said. The traveler finished the rice in his bowl. He set the bowl beside him on the stone. Then he said, the deeper lesson is that the fishmonger was not the problem. He looked at KAGEYORI for the first time. His eyes were not unkind. They were almost amused, the way an older man's eyes are amused at the seriousness of a younger one. The fishmonger is what he is. He sells fish. He overcharges scholars. He laughs with the men at the next stall. He has done this for 30 years, and he will do it for 30 more. He is the weather. You do not argue with the weather. You do not flee from the weather. You walk through the weather, and you do not let the weather become the shape of your face for the rest of the afternoon. You have let the weather become the shape of your face. I saw it from a quarter-mile away. KAGEYORI looked at his own hands. He thought of every argument he had walked away from in his life, every small triumph of not engaging, every quiet superior turn of the shoulder. He had thought in each of those moments that he was practicing the higher art. He understood now that he had only been performing the shallow version, and that the higher art had nothing to do with the leaving. The higher art was in what a man carried home with him afterward. The traveler picked up his bowl. He stood. There is a deeper version still. I will not tell you tonight. You will not believe it until you have spent a year practicing the second and discovered that the second is not enough. Most men do not get to the third. Most men die in the second, with a small bitter scholar still living inside their chest, even when the academy is 50 leagues behind them. He picked up his staff. He began to walk down the path. He did not look back. KAGEYORI sat on the stone for a long time. The fish in his hand had gone cold. He did not know yet whose voice he had been listening to. But he understood that he was going to begin practicing the second lesson the next morning, and that the third, whatever it was going to find him on a road he had not yet chosen. The year the weather stopped following him home, KAGEYORI practiced the second lesson for a year. He did not return to the academy. He stayed in the small province he had grown up in. He took a room above the rice merchant's storehouse. He paid for it by writing letters for villagers who could not write their own, and by tutoring 2 boys whose father wanted them to know more than the village had taught them. He went back to the fish stall every week. He did not need to. He had stopped eating fish for 2 months out of a small private contempt he did not want to admit was contempt. When he understood in the 3rd month that the not eating was the heat the traveler had warned him about, he began going to the stall again. Every week, same hour, same fishmonger. The fishmonger overcharged him every time. KAGEYORI paid every time. He did not argue. He did not flinch. He paid the wrong price, and he walked out of the market, and he watched inside himself for the heat. For the 1st month, the heat was there. He carried it home. He sat with it. He did not feed it by rehearsing better arguments in his own head, and he found slowly that an unfed heat does not last. It rose in his chest at the stall. It walked beside him on the road. It sat down at his small wooden table. And then, having found nothing to eat, it left. By the 4th month, it left faster. By the 6th, it was barely there when he set the coins down. By the 9th, the fishmonger had stopped laughing. This was the part KAGEYORI had not expected. He had thought the practice was for himself, that the fishmonger would remain the fishmonger forever, and that the only thing KAGEYORI could change was the temperature inside his own chest. The weather does not change. You change. He had been right about the change in himself. He had been wrong about the weather. The fishmonger, by the 9th month, had stopped finding the game funny. He had been laughing for 30 years at scholars who tried to argue. The arguments had been the food. Kageyori had stopped serving the food. Fishmonger's hunger for the small private contempt of cheating an educated man had begun to thin, not because the fishmonger had been improved, but because the fishmonger had begun to find, in the silent paying of the wrong price, something the laughter at the next stall could not cover. It was unease. A small unease, almost invisible. The unease of a man who senses that the game he is playing is being witnessed by something larger than the man in front of him. In the 10th month, the fishmonger gave Kageyori the right price. He did not announce it. He did not apologize. He simply set the fish on the wooden plank and named the correct number. And Kageyori paid the correct number. And the fishmonger turned to the next customer. And the men at the next stall did not laugh because there was nothing this time to laugh at. Kageyori walked home with the fish. He sat in his room that evening and he understood with a small, cold clarity that the second lesson was not enough. He had won. That was the part that bothered him. He had set out a year ago to practice the higher art of not carrying the weather home. He had practiced it, and he had discovered that the practice had quietly become a different thing, a slower, more patient version of the same hunger that had walked him into the market the first time. He had wanted all along to be vindicated. He had only learned to wait longer for it. The traveler had warned him. Most men die in the second. Kageyori did not know yet what the third lesson was. He knew only that the small, bright satisfaction of having outlasted the fishmonger was not the feeling of a man who had arrived. It was the feeling of a man who had won a smaller version of the same game. The village began to come to him in the 11th month for advice. Not the scholars, the villagers, the men who had laughed at the next stall a year ago. They came one at a time in the evening with small problems they did not know how to bring to anyone else. Kageyori listened. He gave the small, plain answers he could give. He did not perform. He did not condescend. And he noticed listening to them a thing he had not noticed before. Some of these men were the same men he had once dismissed in his mind as stupid. They were not. They were men who had spent their lives in conversations Kageyori had never been a part of, learning things Kageyori had never bothered to learn. Some of what they said was sharper than any argument he had ever heard at the academy. He had been called the clearest mind of his generation. He understood in the 11th month that he had not been clear at all. He had only been loud in rooms where everyone agreed about what loudness meant. This, he understood, was where the third lesson lived. But he did not know yet how to enter the room. The third lesson and what it cost him. The third lesson found him in the 14th month. It found him through the fishmonger. Kageyori had not seen the man for 2 weeks. The stall had been empty. The other merchants did not know where he was. On the third morning of the third week, Kageyori went to the fishmonger's house at the edge of the village and knocked. A young man opened the door, the fishmonger's son, 12 years old. His eyes were red.
"My father is sick," the boy said.
Kageyori bowed. He asked if he could see him. The fishmonger was on a mat in the back room. He was smaller than Kageyori remembered. His face had thinned. His hands were laid on the blanket and did not move. The fishmonger looked at him. "You are the scholar." "Yes." "You came to the stall every week." "Yes." "You did not argue with me." "No." "I knew after the 4th month that you were not going to. I had been doing the same thing for 30 years and no one had ever come back. I thought at first that you were waiting for me to make a mistake. Then I thought you were laughing at me from inside your own head. By the 8th month I had stopped thinking either of these. I was only watching." He paused. "You changed me. I did not want to be changed. I am old. But you came every week and you paid the wrong price. And you walked out without the heat on your face and I could not, in the end, keep finding it funny." Kageyori did not speak. The fishmonger looked at the wooden beam above him. "I would like to ask you for something. Anything. My son. Teach him to read. I cannot pay you. The shop will close when I die. He will be a fisherman or a porter or one of the men who carry rice for the merchants. I do not mind these things. They are the lives of good men. But I would like him to know whether the price he is being given is the right one. I do not want him to be cheated by a scholar the way I cheated you." Kageyori bowed his head. He understood in that small bowed moment what the third lesson was. It was not patience. It was not the absence of heat. The second lesson had been those things, and the second lesson had not been enough. The third lesson was the moment a man stopped looking at the fishmonger as the weather, as a thing to be endured, outlasted, or quietly defeated, and began to see him as a man with 30 years of his own behind him, a man with a son, a man with a fear hidden under the laughter, that his son would be cheated the way he had spent 30 years cheating others. The traveler had told him the truth, and Kageyori had not understood it for 14 months. The fishmonger had not been the problem. The fishmonger had been a man. Kageyori had been so busy not arguing with him, then so busy outlasting him, then so busy noticing he had outlasted him, that he had not in any of those months seen him. He had been clever about the fishmonger. He had not been with the fishmonger. This was the cost. The cost was not that the third lesson was harder than the second. The cost was that Kageyori would never get back the 13 months in which he had been practicing a higher version of the same contempt, and that the fishmonger on the mat in the small back room was going to die before Kageyori had ever known his name. Kageyori asked it. The fishmonger told him. He said it once, he did not say it again. Kageyori repeated it inside his own head slowly, and he understood that this was the name of a man he had stood across from in a wooden market stall once a week for 52 weeks and had never thought to ask. He stayed until evening. He taught the boy his first 3 characters that night, sitting beside the fishmonger's mat while the fishmonger slept. The fishmonger died 11 days later. Kageyori kept the boy. He taught him for the next 6 years. He never returned to the academy. On the road one autumn afternoon, an old man passed him going the other way.
Older now?
A wooden staff in his hand, a short blade at his hip. The traveler did not stop. He did not look at Kageyori. He passed at the distance of a single arm's length, and as he passed, without turning his head, he said very quietly, "Now you have learned." Kageyori did not answer. He walked on. A man at the next inn that evening told him the traveler's name was Musashi. Kageyori did not say anything. He drank his tea. He paid the correct price. And he thought, walking back to his room above the storehouse, that the third lesson was the only one he had ever been meant to learn, and that the first 2 had only been the long road that brought him to the small back room of a fishmonger he had walked past every week for 52 weeks, without ever once asking the man his name.